So before we get into this interview, a little bit of housekeeping. Obviously, there are some directors, filmmakers, creatives that can't make it to the festival because it can be a bit of a trek, especially if you're living in America or Spain or Germany or France or wherever. You know, it can be a bit of a trek. So what I decided to do again was to get some pre-recorded stuff done. I got on the old Zoom, StreamYards, whatever people wanted me to get onto, I got onto them. And we did some remote calls, pre-recorded stuff, awesome interviews with some great filmmakers that I can't wait for you to listen to right now. Just because you can't get here, you should still get your Q&A, and it should still be with me because I'm the best one. You're going to be getting a few of these throughout the week, scattered around. This is Nerdly Out Loud, Nerdly TV. We are at Romford, the Romford Film Festival. We love the Romford Film Festival. We're going to continue coming back here every single year as long as they will have us. If you've been living under a rock and you have not seen this, Nerdly has got themselves into a little position where we are in partnership with Shepka Productions, The Baby in the Basket, which is a gothic horror. He's joined up with Flickering Myth to partner up and make this movie, and then they came to us and asked Nerdly to jump on board too. Absolutely, we were going to do that, and we did a crowdfunder. The crowdfunder went amazing. It's still ongoing, so you can go to Kickstarter, type in The Baby in the Basket. I'll put links all over the place. Type in The Baby in the Basket. Give £1, give £10, but only give what you can. We don't want people giving money they don't have. Please do all those wonderful things. Like, subscribe, bell, all of it. Brilliant stuff. Let's get into today's interview, which will be with whoever's in the title. But if you're not at Romford, get yourself there. Get yourself to the cinema. We are showing a smorgasbord of awesome movies.
Feet. I'm going to start rewatching that. It's going to get my mind working on this series that I'm developing with my partner. So
awesome.
So, yeah.
Let's jump into
anyway.
this.
What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about you and your films. So I'll start with a little preamble, and then we'll just get going. And I've got some questions, and let's jump in. So here we are again, Nerdly Out Loud, Nerdly UK, nerdly.co.uk, the official website of all of your favourite British news reviews and exclusive interviews. We are doing another Romford interview. I am still inside Romford, although I am pre-recording this, so that, forget I said that. But we are still at the Romford Film Festival, and I'm here to talk to director and writer John Mossman, the director and writer of... maybe quite a controversial movie, but a movie that I think everybody should really check out. And the movie's called A Good Guy with a Gun. And how are you today, John?
I'm great. It's nice to talk to you, and I really wish that I was there right now.
I kind of hate the fact that I'm stuck in like this really horrendous studio, and you've clearly got the sun just beaming on your face.
Beaming down. Yeah, it's very, very nice here in Chicago right now. It's rare. You have to take advantage. And I was outside on a 2-day shoot last 2 days, and I didn't remember my sunblock, so I feel like, I've been in Florida or something, minus the horrific oppression of minorities that state seems to be moving towards.
Well, we're going to get into Good Guy with a Gun in a second, which we are showing at our festival, and we're so pleased that you let us show it. We're buzzing that you submitted it to us, and we think it's going to get a reaction. We think people are going to enjoy it, so that's all good. But before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about John. How did John Mossman come into the game? How did you find your come up in the industry, and why would you decide to do filmmaking?
Well, it's funny. I talked about this with a photographer. I was looking at just some headshots of some people, and someone had just done some tremendous portraiture, and she was doing headshots that were more like portraits. So I reached out to her saying, "Man, you do a very different style of headshot. You really embrace the old school idea of portraiture." And she said, "Yeah, I feel like that's how I get to know people, is through a lens." And I feel like and she said her father gave her a camera, or she took the camera when she was a kid. And that's what happened to me. It was when I was a little kid. My dad had he had a little dark room in the basement. He had a lot of cameras, a lot of vintage cameras, which weren't so vintage at that time, but were working, and I could use any of them. And so I got to know the world a little bit through a lens. And for someone, if you got, I don't know, a lot of people that they have ADHD or OCD or
Mhm.
Tourette's or any of those things where you're like, you can't control a lot in your world, but you can control what's in that frame. I think that was a very early, it held some very early appeal, and I just loved pictures and the art of photography. So that's what started me. And then he had a Super 8 camera, and then I
Yeah.
started making films. I saw a film my brother had made like in high school. It was just you know taped together, Super 8, and I thought it was the most brilliant thing I'd ever seen. And I wanted to do that. And then I went and saw 2001 when I was way too young at the local theater, and decided I was going to make a movie someday, and it was going to play at this theater. And those things, and then I got lassoed into theater acting, and but I still went to school for theater and film, and it was at a time where you really had to pick. They wanted you to just kind of stay in your lane. What are you going to do? You're going to be a filmmaker, and what kind of filmmaker? You're going to be a boom op, because that's what you're going to be all your life. And
Yeah.
it's sort of horrible time, man, back in the '80s, and but I just stuck with it, and so I ended up being able to direct and do theater and be a filmmaker just through attrition. you know, I just I outlived the sort of oppressive mores that were there then. And I attribute that a lot to the digital revolution, where everybody just
Mm,
started doing whatever the hell they wanted to do. I'm a
mm,
musician. I'm also going to be a filmmaker. I'm a rapper. I'm also going to be a clothing designer. I mean, these are all things that just didn't exist when I was a kid
no.
as a model. So yeah, I'm glad I held on. And
And
yeah,
but
then
but of
and then I
all
made Good Guy. Yeah.
of all those different disciplines, what would you say gives you the most enjoyment? The one that you really kind of have a passion for?
I'm so compartmentalized as a human being. I don't know if that's healthy at all, but I would say, there's something about acting that feeds the immediate need of like an athlete or something, where the adrenaline is in the high focus, high danger sort of feeling of being live, on a
Yeah.
stage. For me, that's hard to replace by anything. But like being on set yesterday, directing a really cool, cool piece, which I would describe as like Mary Pickford meets Eraserhead, where there's a lot going on. And it's a very creative story, and only so much that you can plan for, and some you have to see right in the moment when it's in front of you as a director. Um, that's a whole different thing. And then when I write something and I do it myself, I put so much of myself into it. Like I feel like that's the most personal thing. I think when you're a
Yeah.
filmmaker and you make a film, that's you, because you throw your life into it for a year, 2 years. Play, you're inhabiting a character for a couple months, 2, 3 months.
Yeah.
So I think those are compartmentalized things. But when I talk about who I think I am, I think that's and what I like the most. I think directing is more precious to me, because it's a little more it's more rare.
And you started out. I saw that you did a few shorts before you went into features.
Yeah, yeah, I
What
did a lot of
what
shorts.
what was it that prompted the jump up to a feature? Was it just time to do that?
Yeah, I think so. And I was also making like just absurdly long shorts. Like my first one was, and I know it wasn't so weird back then, but my first one was like 17 minutes. My next one was 21 minutes. My next one, my ended up 30, 32 minutes, like a featurette. And they all did very well. But I realized like I kind of live in this weird in between world. I need to learn how to make something either 2 minutes or 90 minutes. And so my first feature I made, it was like 76 minutes, barely a feature,
Mm.
but it was. And then this one, yeah, it's an hour and 45, which is a little longer than I was comfortable with. But yeah, I like kind of making a little bit faster paced things, where I try to cut away a lot of the, you know, just a lot. I just cut away anything that's not entirely necessary, and hope that
Yeah,
the audience
it's
will
like
put pieces together.
just like trimming the fat and
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessive about trimming fats.
sometimes as well, like you say as well, you don't always have to tell the audience everything. You can just show them a little bit, and
Yeah.
that's for me. That's the sort of best sort of filmmaking where the director or the filmmaker is not really pandering to me and letting me figure it out.
Mhm.
So no, I get that. I totally get that.
Watch Spaceman Dan's 243rd Flight sometime. That 30-minute short. That's weird as shit. It's weird. Sorry, I swore. But it does that, and I'm
Yeah,
proud of it for that. And I think I threaded the needle, because that's hard to do. Someone like you is probably, you see so much, and that you
yeah.
have the ability to actually make those leaps. A lot of people, you just got to decide how many people you want to leave a little bit in the dust, and maybe just, if nothing else, they're left with a very strong, deep feeling that
Yeah.
they can't intellectually, they didn't put together all the pieces that you intended, but you left them with an emotion or a feeling that was still rewarding to them.
So let's talk about Good Guy with a Gun, because this is a hell of a piece. It's a
Oh, thanks.
I kind of feel like it's pretty damn important, and I know I'm a little Englander, and sort of the subject matter within this movie, although it is getting a lot more prevalent these days and in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
we're not quite at the level as your country, as America or anything like that. Where did this movie start for you? What was the initial spark, the kernel? Why did you decide you were going to make this story?
That is such a good question, and as you say it, I got goosebumps, because I can't. It's hard for me even to tell you the birth of it. Um, it's only something I started talking about at my first festival, and I totally dissociated as I said it. So here's how it started. I'm a hunter, and grew up with guns, and I didn't, I left it for a long time. I went to the city, and I'm like, didn't want to hunt, and then I decided that if I was going to be a meat eater, I was going to learn how to do that myself again, and do the whole thing: shoot it, skin it, butcher it, make the food, make sausage, do everything, and try to reduce my carbon footprint and be a responsible carnivore. I'm going to be one. So I started associating myself with people with guns. About 10 years ago, things are starting to get a little bit weird. And I noticed on the online conversations. About that time, I had a dream that there had been maybe Columbine or one of those mass shootings in America.
Yeah.
And I had a dream that I was a shooter. And it was a first person dream experience. And I was walking through the woods with a rifle and I was shooting people. It was just a terrible dream. And after I had that dream, I was like, I can't believe I had this dream. I can't believe I just did this. I didn't realize it was a dream. It wasn't lucid. And I thought, I've got to kill myself. This is the only way to undo what I've done. A gun is like, what I've done is so irredeemable, and I can't undo it. And I remember waking up at the moment where I thought I was going to kill myself. It was a very upsetting dream. I went downstairs and I started writing, and I hadn't written for years. I mean, I really sat down to write for a couple of years. And so this got me going. It was about 4 a.m. I was trying to figure out how to put that on paper. And about 3 hours later, I hear my wife upstairs crying in the kitchen. And I go, sort of screaming, and I go, "What's the matter?" And she said, somebody just shot 23 kids at Sandy Hook.
Mm.
And it was so, I felt like I experienced this rip. And it was just, I don't even believe in that stuff, very much at all. And I certainly didn't then, but it was such not a coincidence to me. And it was so upsetting. I couldn't even tell it that what I was doing at that moment. And I couldn't resolve it. And right after that happened, Wayne LaPierre, I believe, is the one that quoted the line, "Well, the only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun." He gave that crap out. And I just went nuts. I thought, that's the most idiotic thing. That will never stick. And guess what? It's stuck. America is so stupid. Our ability for critical thinking is just gone. I mean, it's just obvious to the world. We have zero ability for for critical thinking. American thinking is non-critical thinking that's based on emotion now. And the whole, right wing has become basically just hostage to non-critical thinking and working on emotion and tribalism. And so I started reaching out to some gun people, like online, like It's like, why do you need this gun? Why do you need that gun? So is there any gun you don't want? Is it okay for everyone to have a bazooka? And these are lines that came into my movie. And they're like, sure, why not? I don't see why not. We should have that. I'm like, but none of these are good for hunting. And one of them's, and this is the last thing I got, because I pressed the issue on this forum. They said, but none of these can be used for hunting. And then one guy just goes, it's not about hunting, and you know it.
Oh, nice. Wow.
I didn't know it until then. Then I was like, okay, this is what's happening. And so it started coming up. And so, they sort of became my sworn enemies, like, because I was associated with those jackasses. And so, I have a lot of disagreements with people about that. With the whole open carry is awful. It's an awful affront to our society. It's so dangerous. And it's going to get overturned eventually, because too many people are just going to shoot each other. It's going to get to a saturation point where it's beyond Wild West. In the Wild West, when you went into a town like Tombstone, where the shootout at the OK Corral happened, that was because guys didn't surrender their guns, because the guys knew that a bunch of yahoos coming in with pistols were going to do stupid stuff. And we don't have that sense today.
No,
anyway, that's how it started. And then after the inauguration of January 6th, a couple years ago, my friends and I, we just went nuts, and we're like, we got to answer this. And I wrote this story in like 3 days after that.
Is that why in the back and forth that you had with these people and everything, is that why in a good way with a good guy with a gun, you're not picking a side? You're really kind of like down the middle, but you're showing characters on either side that, on both sides are actually given quite good points, but at the same time, really bad points. But is that why you wanted to do that? You didn't really want to pick a side on it?
Yeah, I think if you really look at it, I mean, some people are like, well, this is pro-gun. It's like, looks too much like gun porn to me. I'm like, you're right. There's some self-interrogation that I have involved in this. Like, why don't so many of my movies, American movies, have a gun in them? Usually, though, if I have a gun, the repercussions are awful.
Yeah.
So I don't think I glorify that. But I do show what I think is at its core. How does someone go down this path? Well, frankly, if you got a pea shooter or a slingshot or even a good arm, there's nothing more satisfying than hitting a target. It's like, dink, and you hit, you're like, got it, right? Or you got an acorn, and you're walking behind your buddy and you manage to beat him in the head with an acorn. It's wildly satisfying, and there's nobody who can say it isn't. Like, we've all done it.
Oh, definitely,
So
definitely.
Yeah, it's like satisfying. Or a snowball, you hit a tree. So I think that at the root of target shooting is like, there's something just legitimately fun. I go to an archery range here in Chicago, and people love going with me, women, and men and kids, and we all go, and it's quiet and it's peaceful. I don't like gun ranges. They're loud, they're scary, they're not peaceful, but it's the same impulse. You want to hit a bullseye.
Yeah.
And you want to get out and you want to do that sort of focused, trying to hit the bullseye without trying too hard to hit the bullseye and not get in your head. And, there's something very zen about the process. And so I acknowledge that. And then what happens? What happens to people that go and turn into these other two characters, one of whom I play? And there's two very different sort of villain types in there. And I think, I think they get their comeuppance in the proper way.
I mean,
I don't think I'm very nice to them.
You don't come off too bad, to be honest. A lot better than the other guy.
Oh yeah, that guy's at his core just a bad person. I think I'm a little more like just sort of the devil.
And your character in the movie, with you saying about having that dream and everything like that, would you say your character's sort of based on that dream you had?
My character, is the Riggs, the guy who ends up chasing him and sort of pulls it doesn't say much until the end. He's someone who's a little more, and I'll say this: a lot of people don't recognize me, and when I met it, I have a beard, and they just don't. I'm not like that guy, except I guess I am. I don't know, because I sold it, but I think he's the kind of guy who's just sort of like, he understands that some of these guys out there that are useful to whatever, the movement. Yeah. They're afraid of chemtrails and fluoride and whatever. They're idiots, but they're useful. useful. So yeah, I think he's a little more on the side of less emotional about it.
He's kind of like the Stacy Keach in American History X. He's kind of got that little bit of a vibe to him,
Oh yeah, I
which
like
I
that.
was totally buying
Yeah,
into because I love that movie as well.
nice,
But
nice. Love that. Well, also you seem to like movies that are kind of like on the edge of
yeah, definitely,
some
definitely.
topics, and so that's what
I
I try
think
to do. I actually try to walk it a little bit.
you've got to have the conversation, and without having the conversation, nothing is ever going to work, and then nothing's ever going to change. But what I really liked about the conversation you were having is, as I've already said, I'm a little Englander, so I don't fully know everything like that, but we see on the news over here and on the internet and everything what's going on, and it's kind of what actually is going on over there. And
It's
what I loved about your movie was when I watch the news, I've got zero context. I don't know why people are doing what they're doing. 'Cause it's just like it's a lone gunman doing this, or it's a lone person doing this. He was such a nice guy until this happened. But with your movie, you've got so many different characters on both sides of the argument, some of them neutral as well, that are giving me the context as to why somebody might go down this road. And that's what I really liked about it. Instead of just saying, this guy's a bad guy, this guy's a good guy, like him, don't like him.
right.
And you're like really, really well written characters, is
Oh,
what I'm trying
thank
to say.
you. That's wonderful. Yeah, there's not a lot of good guys and bad guys. First of all, the thing that drove me nuts about the saying "good guy with a gun" is that
Yeah.
it's devoid of nuance. And so I called this sort of a rural noir film, or someone called it that, and I kind of like it. Is that there's a lot of gray area, man. That
Yeah.
the current discussion does not allow for, which means it doesn't allow for discussion. And oftentimes people say, "Well, where do you lie in the whole debate?" And I'm like, the whole term debate. I'm trying to redefine the terms and the premises that I'm being fed. I'm not sure I like to think of it as a debate because that means there's a winner and a loser and there's no
Yeah.
discussion. So
Yeah.
there's
I'm with you there.
when you do that there's a loss of nuance, and that stupid phrase is completely devoid of it. And I just I'm just insulted as a human being that people talk that way. Like we're smarter than this, man. We
And,
are,
and
but
you
apparently not.
and you've got some fantastic characters, but you've got some fantastic actors, and there's some fantastic young actors as well.
Yeah, I'll go tell
How
you said that. I'll tell you
how
said
did
that.
how did you go about putting this young cast together? Because they all have great chemistry. They all work really well together, and I was buying all the motivations. So how did you put these guys together?
Well, they were all. Here's how. Yeah, I knew that it was going to be important that I was putting this thing together during the pandemic, and that I
Mm,
wouldn't get. I didn't have enough money or like resources to have rehearsals to build an ensemble. So I have an acting school and a theater company here in Chicago. And so I used as many people as I could, but I'm also good at sort of ensemble building, like trying to make people a team quickly. So what I did was I talked on the phone to people a lot about their feelings. We got to know each other, and I auditioned them on Zoom. And then I was like, okay, but before we meet, we got to find a restaurant or a bar that's open, and then we're going to go there and meet. And then we would hang out, and and uh, uh, and then I need to meet them. Be like, can they look me in the eye? And like when we talk, and what's my vibe person to person? Because
mm.
Zoom is a little different. You get in a room with someone, you're like, oh, that's not the person I thought I was gonna know. So I once I finally cast everyone, um, and I worked with enough actors to feel like, okay, I think my instincts are okay, but what I really got to make sure I guard against is the idea that the when I bring all these people together in the cast, in the crew, in a very emotionally charged film
Mm,
that some people might have a problem with, I try to talk to everyone. Like, if you don't like anything from guns, if you really hate guns, that's okay, but you're going to be around a lot of them. It doesn't
yeah,
bother me. In fact, I want to talk to you about why you might. But if you don't like this topic or someone who's going to drop the N bomb because you know what, he's a racist, and this is my black writer friends are telling me, you better be saying that word and don't
yeah,
freaking, as they said, whitewash your movie, which is like, don't white liberal guilt your movie into having no bad words, dude. Say the words that these guys would say.
I like
And
that.
believe me, there are people that would not say them.
Yeah,
All the white people would like, under a certain age, it was hard to find people that I thought had the nerve to play a character that they would be afraid. to be mistaken for on social media.
Yeah.
And so I found that, and then I finally found this group that I thought was like willing to go in there and play characters with nuance. Kade, the kid who's the kid of the awful guy, he's a tragic character, and he's funny, and he's likable, and
Yeah.
he's 6 months away, as one character says, from being a full-baked asshole, and he's got this much time to
Yep.
pull his act together before he becomes his dad. So I took them all to a bar. I was like, we can't have a rehearsal, but I'm going to buy you all, whoever's of age, which was all but for the lead guy, wasn't of age. We all went to this sort of restaurant bar rooftop in the city of Chicago, and we hung out for about 4 hours, and I just bought them food and drink and whatever, and it was probably the best 3 hours I could have spent, because then they sort of,
Yeah.
I was like, you don't have to come because it's not an official rehearsal where I have to pay you. You know, it's going to cost me a couple $1,000. It cost me $300, and I did that a few times. I just said, let's go hang out and have dinner or whatever. And so they built this ensemble that was really tight, and they just liked each other. I hired people that were really likable, and they liked each other, and that was like, I think that was like sort of the core of my movie, was to find that foundation of people that wanted to hang out with each other.
I kind of love the idea as well, and it probably sounds bad, but I kind of love the idea that Beck couldn't go because he is the new kid.
Yeah, right. Well, he did go because it's legal to be in this place if you're not drinking.
But you can't drink.
Yeah, but you know what? I did look over. I thought I saw him sipping a Vizzy at one point. Someone bought him a little seltzer.
No, you just mentioned the character there, and I do want to touch on him a little bit. David Stillby as Kade. I love it when I watch a movie and I see a character that I doesn't get a great deal of screen time, but I still sit there and I think, what's that guy's life? What's going on with him when he's not on the screen? Would you ever consider building on Cade's story?
That's so funny you say that, because I showed up one day to the set, and they're all hanging out in the sort of dressing room area, in the general area where we were shooting, and they're laughing. They're like, "We got your sequel." Like, what? Yeah, it's Kade. It's Cade's story, and it starts with him auditioning for Broadway, and Kade has had this transformation. He's like, "All right, I'll be doing something from your good man Charlie Brown." Oh,
I'd watch that.
That's, to this day, that is the official sequel, is Cade's journey to Broadway. So yeah, that's, everyone agrees that the sequel should be Cade's. We're just not quite sure if, should it be like Mamma Mia or
I'd watch the crap out of that. I would.
David Stillby's amazing. He's great.
He's really good in the movie, and he's got some fantastic little scenes in there that any other actor, and I'm not going to look over other actors, but it's one of those things that I don't think anybody else could have maybe done it. Like, the way he plays that role is sort of like, it's pretty nailed on.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I did the reading, I was just trying to find people to do a Zoom reading of this new script I had, and I called a buddy, Brian Schaff, who runs the Columbia College theater department at the time, and I said, I need some young guys. I worked at the college in the film department. I said, I need young guys. I don't have that many really, really young looking people in my theater. They're all after college, post college. I need to find some young people. He gave me a list, and the first two he gave me were like Stillby, and there was another one I ended up casting. But Stillby, I called him first to play the lead, and then he's like, sure, I'll read this thing. He called me back right away. He was very much a hustler. A lot of, you leave a phone message for someone who's 21 years old or 23 years old, and a lot of times it takes days. Right? Yeah. He called me back right away. He read it. I was like, so you want to, this is just a reading, but you want to read the lead? He goes, actually, I don't. I want to read Kade.
Nice.
Yeah. So he chose Cade's role just for the reading. I would have, if I was his age, like, yeah, I'm taking the lead. I'm going to read that lead. And he's like, no, he knew, as he said later, that Kade was the most tragic character and complex. And I agreed. And as soon as he said that, I was like, okay. And he came and he just killed it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to hold auditions, but there's just almost no chance that anyone would do better than him. And no one came close. They just played him with such two-dimensional. They just didn't understand him. This guy found his humor. I want him to be funny. And I don't know. I thought he was pretty funny.
He's kind of like an awkward funny, definitely,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you
He's an
get
awkward. He's like a man child.
yeah, you get that. You do get that. Like he's been kind of held back mentally, kind of thing, and yeah, I kind of love that character, and he gets my favorite look in the whole movie as well. When he's got the horrible bastard policeman standing behind him, kind of, I do love that little look at the end. That sort of longing of take me with you, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, he's done.
yeah,
He's done.
I
He's
do love that.
yeah.
So the movie's out and about on festivals, and you're pushing it out there, promoting it, and everything. That's why you're here, because we are showing it at the Romford Film Festival. Please do come, everyone, if you're in the area. What has the what's the response been like?
It's interesting. This is a very thoughtful interview, and the interest in it that you're showing is in stark contrast to a lot of the interest in America. It's really interesting to everybody. When we made this, we thought, oh, this is a very American story. Anyone with a gun should see it. Anyone who likes guns, anyone who hates guns will want to see this if they're really interested in like the conversation. What we found is a lot of American. I have submitted to as many redneck states as I could. I finally went to Arizona. I got into two very interesting festivals in sort of redneck states. One was Capital City in Michigan, which is sort of, there's a lot of militia there, but it's also got a very hardcore liberal sort of community in its capital. But still, like, the militias are just outside the gate in Michigan. And it played there, and it played just last month in Arizona, which is sort of an independent place, and I have some ties to it. So I love Arizona. It's redneck for sure, but it's super independent, and I have a lot of family and history there, and so I kind of wasn't surprised by that. Other than that, Georgia, the South, anywhere, deep Midwest. I try to get in the Midwest because it's really, a lot of the crap is happening in the Midwest. People don't want to, they don't want to program it. And it's
That's
all over
interesting.
the world. Isn't that interesting? It's all over the world.
Yeah.
It's winning, and people are finding it interesting in all these other countries because I think they want to unpack it. And the questions you ask me are fascinating, and the audiences, their reaction. They see the guy with the AR-15, and I've actually been in a house where people go, oh, they're watching. That doesn't happen in America. People are like, ugh, or whatever.
They're just looking at it going, that's a Tuesday. Whereas we're kind of sitting there going, man, that looks badass. I don't want one, but it looks badass.
Yeah, or that's
Yeah, I know
that's
what you're
crazy.
saying.
A guy like that could be on the streets. Like, they allow it, and it's some places they for some reason encourage it. I don't understand, but so it's interesting. I think the worldwide response has really surprised us. But yeah, so and interviews like this where you actually see things and you're curious and you ask really, I think, very good questions. That happens. The question and answers and the interviews in America are really different than this sort of interview, and I prefer this one, but I'll take any of them.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
But so obviously you did make it with an idea in mind and a sort of like, not necessarily a message, but what do you hope people take away from the movie? Like either Americans or the UK or anywhere in the world. What do you really hope people take away?
I think, part of it has nothing to do with guns, and it's just the advice of my very Republican father when I was growing up, and that was, be careful about who you're walking down a path with. Be careful about what path you're taking in with who, because you're going to hit a point where it's very hard to walk it back. And this was my highly Republican father, and so towards the end, I saw him stop donating to his party, still resisting speaking nicely about the Democrats, but knowing that he was walking down a path and probably had helped walk down a path that
Right.
had forever changed the party and made him a man without a country. In terms of that, the party will never recover, I don't think, from this. And that's the fault of the Republican Party going down this path with these lunatics that are mixing up military and religion. And it's a really deadly combination. So I think that can be said, he said that to me all the time, like every week, every time I went out, he's like, have fun, not too much fun, and careful, careful,
Yeah.
you go down a path that's hard. I'm like, yeah, I've heard it 1,000 times. And, this is sort of my reminder to the world that, you have to do that, and that some of you did it and you knew you were doing it. And you have to take responsibility for that. And you can walk it back, but not without a certain cost. I think the character of Will and his mother, Tessa, they do come out of it sort of okay. Sort of.
Yeah, he's never going to be the same, and I don't think she is either.
Thank you. Right. Yeah. I've had people like, wow, they got away with it. I go, what world?
No, they did not.
Thank you.
It's the whole thing about cause and effect, and every action has a consequence. But there are a lot of people out there who just seem to watch these films about these characters and these stories and go, "Oh, he got away. He's fine. He's all good." And it's like, nah. You need to watch the sequel.
Yeah. Right. And I've asked people that. I was like, said to the cop, that was questioning him. I told him someone said that. Yeah, the cop that was like, hey. And he's like, oh, you think Officer Osborne's just going to let him go?
That's like,
he's going to make a visit to Chicago.
His scene when he goes to the door and then he goes over to Jonah's house as well. That is some of the most awkward writing and acting that I've seen in terms of like me watching it, not them portraying it. I'm sitting there watching it going, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you like it. I think that's one of my favorite things that I've shot and edited. And the thing, John the Flamboy, he's one of my writing. He was a story consultant. He and I just would rage, and then he'd say things, and I was like, hold on, let me write that down. And then that would go to Duke's mouth. He'd say something awful about like these guys. I'm like, that is a line. And so a lot of lines, that came out of some of the worst were things that he was sort of like spewing about these people. And he did that in one take. He did that. We did one on the wide and one on the tight. And it was, talk about a guy who's got your back.
Yeah.
I work with him all the time, and I'm glad that you say that, because he just came in, delivered. It was tight, and I was like, wow, that was sort of perfect. We don't need a second take.
Right. So
yeah,
I'm going to start wrapping this up. Though, John, thank you so much for letting us have your movie. Thank you for submitting them. But first of all, what are you working on next? What are you actively got in the pipeline? I know you're pushing this movie out right now, but what's next?
I just shot a short film called Fitting Descriptions, about a woman who's trying to it's a short film about a woman who's trying to come to grips with an identity crisis that's sort of being forced upon her by the industry, an actress, as she turns 40. And it's funny and horrifying. It's the one where it's Mary Pickford meets Eraserhead.
Nice.
Yeah, and then that I just shot that, and that's a short. But I've got 2 features that I'm working on. One that it's just about done with. I love it. It's if we're going to continue in the combinations like Kubrick meets Coen Brothers, this one is a very different one. It's a legit, I think, combination of 2 of my favorite sort of filmmakers. It's a story of an archaeologist who flames out and goes on the run with a 6,000-year-old bog body, which you guys are familiar with in Britain. But he finds one through very illicit but kind of genius means. He goes on the run, chased by this host of lunatics, and who see it as an answer to their dreams. And they're all like, got a body. It's like mad world. And in the meantime, we jump back and forth in time to the life of the actual man himself, who died in the midst of the world's first existential crisis. And so it's just kind of like man becoming modern man and trying to being frustrated with trying to make a mark on the world at a time when nothing happened, mid-archaic people that are just forgotten in time. And so some of it's about identity and about who we want to be and how we want to be remembered, and why is it important that we're remembered, and how are we connected? We're connected by so many other ways that we have yet to understand as human beings. Right now, we're just sort of focused on our very tribal qualities, and I think that there are things that we'll discover in time, long after we're gone, that how we identify will be defined in very different terms. And I look forward to exploring that more with this movie. And I'm sorry I won't be around long enough to see how it actually does happen, but maybe.
Right, John. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. I've taken up a lot of your time, and
it's great.
Again, honestly, thank you for submitting the movie, and thank you for letting us show it. I'm sure everybody's going to have a good time with it, either which way they land on it. Best thing is they'll be coming out thinking, so that's all you can ask for.
And if anyone wants to reach out and tell me their thoughts, I would love to hear them. You can reach out to me at heymossman@gmail.com or John at Mossman Films. I would love to hear people's thoughts. If you want to bring it anywhere, I've had some universities want to bring it to nice. Be part of programs. So conversation is welcomed. Either way,
absolutely.
However you feel about it. So thank you.
Thank you so
much. Have a good
time.
So
much.
Wish I could be there. I'm very depressed that I'm not. It sounds like a super cool fest. And Desires and Illusions sounds like a great film too. You should see that.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And you're saying that, but you still have the sun beaming in your face.
So, how did he die, your dad?